Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. Oh, where have I gone? Hi, I don't know what happened there. But I'm back. So it's great to see you, everyone. Today I want to talk to you about human computation. Now, I want to start by saying to you that human computation is not my natural arena, certainly not academically, and even just in terms of general interest, or at least so I thought. However, I understood after my Alison McDowell 101 that the elite see that there would be benefits to having the rest of us operate in the way that an ant colony operates or a beehive operates. So there's a common goal and we all work towards it. And so shortly after I had posted that video, James Scott, who is a friend on Facebook, posted a link to the Handbook of Human Computation. And he intimated that this was something that the elite were all reading themselves, and that they didn't actually want us to spend any time paying too much attention to it. So I decided to have a look at it today, and I'm coming to you largely unprepared. And I hope by the end of the video, you'll understand why. I rarely come angry, and I hope that I am managing to convey sufficient warmth to carry on, but I am angry. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the Handbook of Human Computation, and hopefully, even though you can't see it, I'll be able to carry you with me. So it's the Handbook of Human Computation, and it was put together by somebody called, hold on, let me just, page one, Pietro Michelucci. Now, I'm probably cannibalizing that. I do apologize. He is the editor. However, he is the editor along with, page 14, we have Matthew Bloomberg. Now, that's a name that I know many of you are familiar with. Here it says Matthew Bloomberg is an entrepreneur focusing on digital media and technology. He is a founder and executive director of Grid Republic, a non-profit organization that uses volunteer computing to provide supercomputing resources to public interest research. So he probably is harnessing all sorts of data from the volunteers in order to refine his AI, which he intends to use to his advantage and not yours. Page 38. Introduction. A more descriptive title for this book would have been The Application, Design, Infrastructure and Analysis of Heterogeneous, Multi-Agent Distributed Information Processing Systems and Their Political, Societal and Ethical Implications. But as brevity is the soul of wit, I decided to go with simply Handbook of Human Computation. So apparently that's what passes for humor in the world of the elite. Whoa, they must be really boring people. Anyway, right, so page 39. Then what do we mean by human computation? And on this page it says computation in this context refers not just to numerical calculations or the implementation of an algorithm. Computation refers more generally to information processing, and this definition intentionally embraces the broader spectrum of computational contributions that can be made by humans, including creativity, intuition, symbolic and logical reasoning. In brackets it says, though we humans suffer so poorly in that regard. And then abstraction, pattern recognition, and other forms of cognitive processing. As computers themselves have become more capable over the years due to the advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques, we have broadened the definition of computation to accommodate those capabilities. Now, as we extend the notion of computing systems to include human agents, we similarly extend the notion of computation to include a broader and more complex set of capabilities. Essentially, what they're saying is human computation is the blend of what AI can achieve with what humans can achieve. Fusing, and this is what when people say to you that they're looking for transhumans, and they're looking to make people less human and part computer, this is kind of the foundation of that. So why is human computation important? Each of this book's many contributors may have a distinct answer to this question. My short answer, and this is Michael Bloomberg talking, is the following. As a species, we face multifarious challenges stemming directly and indirectly from our use of technology, and many of these challenges pose an existential threat to humanity. I believe that one promising avenue of recourse is to use technology to help us cooperate more effectively to solve the problems that we have created. Now, nowhere in this book do they discuss that another solution might be to have the architecture which is going to surveil everybody and cause these problems removed, and to have some sort of moratorium on going further forward with any AI until there is legislation in place based on conversations that have been had by, as best as possible, the entirety of society about what we feel is appropriate. This acts as if this book talks as if it's inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable that we should go forward with technology. Technology will continue to, affect our lives, and that there is no other answer. So I'm going to go on to the next page, and that's 44. Foundations in Human Computation. Here, I wanted to read to you. The idea here is that crowdsourcing is an early example of human computation. So in their mind, when anything has been crowdsourced, he gives a list of examples. Funnily enough, the Pfizer, when Naomi Wolf got outsourced and crowdsourced and asked everybody who had any affiliation with the law to have a look through the Pfizer dumped documents, and they did that, and they fed the information back to her. They didn't use that example, but they did refer to many other examples where crowdsourcing has been used, and the issue with it, as far as they're concerned, is that it always has involved people doing repetitive tasks which could have been done by the initial or the group itself, but they were unable to do it just simply because they didn't have enough people to do it. However, the implication is they probably could have done a better job themselves. They just needed the help. So essentially, they sort of see it as sort of sweatshop labor. In fact, it says here, we're seeking to encourage thinking beyond the virtual sweatshop model, and to replace it with the aspiration to create massively large-scale thinking systems which might someday be used to address problems at an order of complexity beyond the competence of any individual person. And we will go on. I'll elaborate a little bit in a minute, but actually the book does a fairly good job of taking you through it. So this is, again, Matthew Bloomberg, and he's saying that his interest in human computation dates back to 2008 and the FIFA World Cup final. The truth being an American, I didn't watch it. I read about it the next day. It was quite a match, apparently. But what was most notable in the coverage to me was the comment that the match had been watched live by 700 million people. A soccer game being about 90 minutes long, this amounts to more than 1 billion hours of human attention focused on a bouncing ball. That's about 120,000 person years of attention compressed into 90 minutes, which raised the question, what could be done with all that cognition? Could it be harnessed for constructive purposes? What knowledge and tools and methods would be required? And then it goes on to detail a little bit about crowdsourcing, but I actually managed to cover that already, and I don't want to keep you too long, so I'll give you click workers was one of the examples he gave of crowdsourcing. People were shown images of surfaces of Mars and asked to help map it by drawing circles around the craters. And one other one, Galaxy Zoo. People are shown images of galaxies and asked to categorize them by visual features, spiral, disk, etc. The goal is to build a celestial almanac. So, as I said, his problem with those is that they don't actually comprise higher order thinking. And what he details as the problems is that all the users are performing the same task repetitively. In most cases, the task is quite simple, and there is no requirement for interaction between the individual participants while they're performing the work, and there's no parceling of the task type based on user expertise. So in sum, with these tasks, there is no higher level thinking being done by the crowdsourcing system. All of the tasks completed by the public, individually and collectively, could plausibly have been done by the project organizers, in most cases better. Okay, so page 48, and we are going to leap over, we're actually not going far, page 49. Now, actually, I cannot, I'm not sufficiently clever, I don't think, to screen share this with you. Hold on a minute. I'm going to try. If it goes horribly wrong, then please forgive me. Where is the screen share option? Okay, no, right. So I'm just going to describe it to you. So he's talking about the architecture of architecture of intelligence. That's where he goes next. And he's interested in the Minsky model, which is somebody who views the mind as Minsky hypothesizes that thinking is made up of many small processes, which he calls agents. These are simple, not especially intelligent in and of themselves, and it's the way that these things are connected that actually creates intelligence. So he thinks that there's an architecture of intelligence. And if I could screen share with you, what you would see is one of those grids where you get an action, and then you break it down into the smaller actions, and then you break it down into the smaller actions until you get to sort of a baseline of actions which are called primitive actions, and then from those you begin to understand what intelligence, the intelligence is capable of. So the argument is how you put these bits of capability together that creates the intelligence. That there isn't, I suppose, if you like, intelligence is in and of itself. So this is quoting, intelligence is created not from intellectual skill, but from the patterns within which intellectual skills are connected. And while he does admit that there are other models of what constitutes intellect, he doesn't actually elaborate on any of them. It's very clear that this is the model that he would like everybody to put as the primary, the one with the best capacity. So he ends this little section by saying, following the earlier discussion, while it may be the case that any individual one of these systems is useful and interesting, it's the potential of putting these things together into systems, into intelligent patterns, into cognitive architectures, where really interesting things may become possible. And I've written, why? Why would we want to do this? Why do we, our problems, for instance, this is just, off the top of my head, we have a problem with poverty, we have a problem with hunger, we have a problem with, these are real problems. Other things are not real problems. And the way to solve those real problems is actually really simple and really human. It's either about the redistribution of wealth, most of which is in the hands of these people, or it's about the redistribution of wealth in alignment with the sharing of skills. And these are not things that we actually need to create ant colony thinking in order to solve. These are not problems that we need to solve. And as I said earlier, if technology is causing us problems above and beyond these real problems, then we need to discuss whether or not we want to be going ahead with technology at all. So my question was why, and of course the first thing, a speculative example. Imagine creating a drug discovery pipeline using distributed thinking. So the first thing they leap to is how to create pharmaceuticals, and obviously pharmaceuticals are something that you can sell. And also that can be used to numb people or to, in other ways, take them out of, put them out of action. Rather than actually help fix their problems, just sort of make them, just about, make it so that they just about cope. In summary, a great deal has been done with crowdsourcing. Current examples share a number of features, however, most notably insofar as each supports only a single type of task. The discussion presents the idea of cognitive architectures, patterns into which individual systems, each performing specific and potentially mundane tasks, might be interconnected to collectively create a higher level of cognition. So you're talking about a level of cognition which is beyond that which humans are able to, an individual human is able to come to themselves. So they're unable to reach that level of intelligence or decision making unless they are a cog in a wheel. So you've got to think about first, what are the problems and who's defining what they are, and if you're a cog in the wheel, then if the solution to a problem is beyond individual human comprehension to reach, then that is, all of this is something which needs a huge ethical conversation to be had around it, to before it ever went forward. So moving on from there, I'm sorry this is a bit disjointed, but the reason for it is that I was so distressed by what I found and what we're going to be coming up to very soon. I'm almost over. There's 1,000 pages of it, and I'm only taking you through the first 100, but I don't think you need to go any further than that to understand why I think this is something that I needed to share with you immediately. We're at page 65, by the way. And 65 is about ant colonies as a model of human computation. And really, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, except to say to you, ask you how you feel about being perceived as, an ant colony, because I think that what they see it as is they will be the people deciding what are the goals and what it is we all need to achieve, and we will be the worker ants who go about making all of this possible, whatever it is that they think is important to achieve. So here we describe the manner in which ants, seen as simple agents, are able to use local information and behavior to produce colony-wide behavior that is robust and adaptive. Ant colonies are particularly suitable models for distributed human computation because they demonstrate how individuals can collaborate in order to perform qualitatively different computations from those any individual agent could perform in isolation. This feature of ant colonies has led them to become extraordinarily successful foragers, dominating ecosystems across the globe for tens of millions of years. What it also talks about in this in this section is natural selection, and how the way that the ants operate lends itself to natural selection. It doesn't elaborate on the fact that what natural selection means is, that some people survive and others don't. If you're not pulling in the same canoe as everybody else, if you don't go with the flow and go with what everybody else is suggesting, then you will be naturally selected out. It talks also about the fact that pheromones are a way that ants are, communicate with one another. I'm just checking that my plug is in and I'm not about to lose power. A little bit of light relief since I'm getting myself so cross. Pheromones are a form of communication for ants, and that's, as I said in my 101 from Alison McDowell, it's when, things like smells are interpreted by every single ant in the colony. They generate exactly the same response from them all. So if you begin to think about, the fact that the people at the top, the elite, own everything that we buy, and that's our food, and that's also, all of the things that we use in order to live, the ability that they have to introduce things like pheromones into the lives of the ordinary man is vast. And so the fact that they're interested in ant colonies and how the pheromones are used by ants in order to get synchronized behavior is something that we should be cognizant of. Right, so, and we are off to page 73. And 73 has come up because, right, the conclusion. So it's, this is basically, I'm just doing a quick look. Ant colonies offer several suggestions for how human computation can strive for more than connecting many humans together to gain additive benefit from each human. Ultimately, as in the emergent computation of ant colonies, the sum of human computation should be greater than the individual contributors of each individual. Ants demonstrate the feasibility of collective coherent behavior even when individuals have only a narrow local perspective. So think about your 15-minute city, your tiny, tiny life, and your, prescribed task. And if you do exactly what you're told and everybody else does exactly what they're told, all of those pieces will fit together and the elite will get the outcome that they want. So going on from there, we are almost to the bit that infuriated me so much that you're having to listen to me unprepared. Thank you. If you're bearing with me, I really, really appreciate it. The psychopathology of information processing systems. So if we organize human participants into systems modeled loosely on cognitive architectures, all this, it is conceivable that such systems will exhibit dysfunction, just as humans do, and it therefore will be necessary to develop methods of thinking about, diagnosing and treating, e.g. debugging, such issues. So this is already beginning to talk about people as if, they can be debugged, as if, their issues are something which, are... Yeah, it's talking about us as if we're technology. Right, so then it goes on, and as I was reading that sentence, I was thinking, well, yes, obviously, if you're going to talk about this sort of thing, you're going to understand that if one ant decides that, they don't agree that doing the task in that way is going to make, serve the end goal quicker, and they start to do something else, then that's going to be an issue where, they might say it's exhibiting dysfunction. However, in the very next paragraph, the first thing that they go on to is two approaches will be explored. The first views mental illness from the standpoint of communications theory and logical structure, essentially viewing mental illness as a failure in information processing, and the second views mental dysfunction from the standpoint of brain chemistry. So basically what they have done there is they have immediately said that if anybody acts in a way which is not coherent with what the rest of the group is doing, it will be categorized as mental illness. And that's why I'm so angry, and that's why I think it's so important that people understand this. And if you think that I am, overreacting, I'm going to take you a little bit further, not too far to go now. This is the second last page. So it starts talking about schizophrenia straight away as an example. Now, schizophrenia is a fairly sort of serious disorder, and people who have it really are, they suffer from just a terrible life experience where they don't experience the same reality as everybody else. It's not something that you would wish upon anybody, and it is something that people can experience sort of off and on, or, at various periods of their life. But anyway, so schizophrenia in an individual is understood to be rooted in the individual's inability to know what kind of message a message is. So that's a definition that they've gotten from some psychologist. I can't remember who it was they came above, but I'm not going to take you back to find it. And that this confusion is often related to repeated experience of double binds. So what they're saying here basically is that if a child is constantly brought up with messages that conflict from their parents and the people around them, it's impossible for them to organize these messages into sensible thoughts, and so they are unable to develop a sort of any kind of healthy neural pathways. And there's definitely something in that. That's not the bit that I have a problem with. A characteristic feature of contemporary, however, this is the bit, and you'll be interested. A characteristic feature of contemporary media has been the blending of news and entertainment, of advertising and news, of opinion and fact, of expert and amateur. That is, one who turns to media for information about the world literally does not know what kind of messages he is getting. And then the increasing unreliability of information type. Is it news, entertainment, advertising? Frequently experienced with particular acuteness around issues presented by institutional parties as double binds, So the requirements of civil liberties versus security, it's got in brackets, can thus be recognized as a communications pattern very much like that experienced by the individual schizophrenic. And so it is perhaps not surprising that the adventurous cultural analyst might perceive comparable symptoms to be exhibited at the cultural level, i.e., one might consider contemporary culture to be exhibiting certain schizophrenic patterns, for instance, pervasive belief in conspiracy theories, i.e., paranoia. And that's why I came on to you, and that's what I think that you need to know and understand, is that they are laying the foundations for the argument that anybody who disagrees with their end goal is schizophrenic. And the conclusion to this chapter is, if true refers to just what's written above, one may aspire to develop means to identify and diagnose such information processing defects, and to develop interventions to prevent, minimize, or eliminate the defects or their systems. Okay, right, let's get back over to myself. I don't know how that went, because I don't imagine that it was my most erudite performance. I found it very, very distressing to read that, and I wanted you to know that that's actually there. That's in black and white. That's the kind of information that they share with each other, and that is what they want for us, and that is how they perceive us. And if we don't understand that, we're in real trouble. And as I said earlier, the only thing that's really going to work here is that we get rid of the infrastructure. And I think that the best way to start, I put a freedom of information request into my local council after I did, I think, the last video. And I asked them who owns the cameras, the LED street lighting, the cameras, and the associated footage. And I want to know who is going to take ownership of this infrastructure, and I will go, I will take my next step after I have that information. So I don't often ask you guys to do anything for me, because I'm always just so grateful that you gift me your time. And so I'm going to ask you to do something for the first time. I'm going to ask you to try and find out who owns the LED street lighting in your area. You're probably going to have to chase and be, you'll go around the houses getting the information, but we need to pin it on someone. We need to know who actually owns it, because it's only through, at least initially, through conversations with these people that we can hope to get anywhere. And we really do need to hope. We need to get somewhere fast. Anyway, right, I have to go back to doing all the things that I normally do. There's a pile of laundry behind me. There are children to be tucked into bed and read to. So I leave you, and I love you. And thank you so much for listening. I hope that the time delay that I can see there just now hasn't been happening throughout. I do apologize if it has been happening. I hope it hasn't been unbearable. Okay, good night. I love you. Bye.